When the market's crashing, it's easy to feel like you're the only one who's ever felt this anxious. And we all have that feeling, right? That's the truth of the matter. And there are some great investors who have felt this pain as well. And they've left behind some great wisdom for us. So we're going to talk about today, share some great quotes from some of the great investors of all time, and talk about how it applies to today. Welcome in. This is Legacy Beyond Wealth. I'm Ben George. He is Rob Shelton. And we got another good show for you today, talking about kind of the market chaos we're seeing, the volatility. And I know, Rob, times like these are tough, right? And I know having an advisor on your side, someone like you, can be very helpful because communication is key. Being able to bounce off ideas, being able to be reassured that, okay, it's not as bad as it might feel.
Absolutely. And I would say a big part of that, of our job right now, is just to listen. These are real feelings that people are having, and it represents, maybe what they feel are crushed dreams or not the ability to live the life that they want. And so we want to make sure we're listening to them, but also providing that advice and wisdom to be able to help them and reassure them that it's going to be okay and that they still can be able to live that best life that they have out there.
Absolutely. And Rob is the founder of Axio Wealth Management. They specialize in comprehensive wealth management tailored for successful families. And we want to have these conversations because they're doing this planning right now, right? They're having conversations every day, but also preparing you for that next market crash so that you aren't caught off guard, you aren't reacting impulsively. But today I want to kind of share some wisdom that other investors have imparted on us through the years, because this isn't the first time we've seen a market crash, and it won't be the last time. So let's begin with Warren Buffett. Everybody knows Warren Buffett. In fact, I think he made the news by getting out of the market a little early, I think, before a lot of this happened. But his quote, this one, I think most people have heard, I'll say, Rob, but be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. It seems easy on paper, but it's tough to execute.
It does. It does. Recently, this last week, I had quite a few people call me and say, hey, we want to dump some more money in the market. And they had some sizable amounts of money that they had sitting on the sideline, kind of waiting for these types of events. And so first and foremost, I think that's a conversation to be having with people is not always have to invest right away, but take a look at that and maybe keeping a little bit of cash on the sidelines for an event like we're seeing, where that volatile times come, where we can be greedy, where others are fearful. And I love that quote by Warren Buffett. It's right on.
All right, Benjamin Graham, who is the author of The Intelligent Investor, a lot into behavioral finance. And I think his quote's interesting, Rob, and I'm curious what kind of spin you'll put on this. But he said the investor's chief problem and even the worst enemy is likely to be himself. And I think we always like to kind of point at external factors many times, but what is usually the problem with ourselves that kind of gets in the way?
I think that could be said in a lot of different industries. I heard once upon a time a quote that the guy that has himself as an attorney for himself is a fool, or something of that nature, right? And we think about it that a doctor never really wants to be performing surgery on himself before, or a dentist. And so that same thing comes into play. I think sometimes we get so zeroed in on our own personal situation that we have blinders on. And I think that's the nice thing about working with somebody else that can take an objective look. Really, when people are extremely emotional, I haven't find that they make the best decisions. It's probably when they make the worst decisions when they're most emotional. And so having someone that you can be able to bounce ideas off of and to be able to put in check sometimes those emotions are important. That being said, they need to listen to the emotions and understand why you may be emotional or have those questions or concerns, and then be able to address them and put a plan in place for you. But yeah, I would definitely say that's absolutely true. In fact, for myself, I have a financial advisor. It's a member on our team that keeps me in check, because I realize that that's the same thing for myself, that I need to be able to reach out and have conversations. None of us are immune from this issue of providing the best advice for ourselves. It's great to have someone else to collaborate with.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm glad you shared that. I think most people would just assume, hey, you do it yourself because you're in this every single day. But it's like, I guess, doctors, they're not doing the surgery on themselves, right? They're having someone else check them up and make sure they're good to go. So that's interesting. What about Jack Bogle? He's the founder of Vanguard. He says, stay the course. No matter what happens, stick to your program. I've said stay the course 1,000 times, and I meant it every time. It is the most important single piece of investment advice, wisdom I can give to you.
Yeah. how do you just say amen? I mean,
Yeah.
I look at it and I see people who feel like they have to perfect something that was already in place and working well for them. Not so much clients, but I'll talk with others in the community. I'll be at a child's baseball game or softball game, and someone will hear where I work in investments, and they'll go, "Man, you must have had a busy week," assuming that we had large call volumes of people calling in. And sometimes I say, "Hey, no, most of the time, most of our clients, we don't get that feedback because we've planned for this," and they seem a little bit shocked. And so I think that's wise advice, so long as you have a plan, you have a program. I think these times are where you take a look and go, maybe I don't have a plan. In our discovery meetings, we ask people, hey, what's your investment plan as they're looking to become on clients? And a lot of times we get a lot of silence and people aren't sure what their investment plan is. They go, well, I just know I'm supposed to put money in and have it work for me, but beyond that, I'm not sure. So I would say that quote's absolutely true, so long as you have a plan and a program. If you feel like you don't have one, hey, reach out to us. We'd love to give you a second opinion and help design something for you.
Yeah, I feel like it's two parts, Rob. I feel like it is part, you don't have a plan, so you can't really stay the course. You don't have a program in place. I think the second part is those emotions really take over, because you always hear this time is different, right? And every situation, it feels that way when you're in the middle of it, because we haven't had this, an administration take such an active approach to things. Or with it was COVID, we've never seen anything like this before. How are we going to respond? I think that's part of it, just overcoming that. Hey, this time it is a little bit different, but ultimately you'll probably be the same.
Yes, and I think during these times, I think back to the economic downturns, if you will, during my career, I go back and during that time, I'm searching for the best and most accurate information. And typically, it's not on the evening news. Typically, it's not something that's readily available. I'm even seeing the industry insiders that I love to listen to. They take time to process and don't want to make knee-jerk reactions, and want to be very thoughtful about the advice that they give out there. And a lot of the money managers we use are in that same boat. And I like that idea versus the knee-jerk reaction. And you're right. It may seem like it's different this time, and usually there's some circumstances that are different, but staying that course has been the time-tested model. It hasn't been proven false yet. And so I would say that that's what we have to go on.
Yeah, and John Templeton actually said the four most dangerous words in investing are "this time is different." And I guess that's Rob, because people will act emotionally, right, and try to respond to that rather than stay in the course.
Yeah, and I think back during COVID, I mean, if you remember during March, it was about this
Mm-hmm.
time in 2020. I mean, the market was hitting what we call circuit breakers, where it closed down the market for the day because it went down so far that they said, hey, we have to pause and give people time to be able to really reflect on this, which I think is interesting that they have that on the stock market, where they close it down because it's gone down too much, just to give a pause to people to reconsider. But the market ended up double digits in positive territory in 2020. And so, yes, we never had a pandemic before, but here's what I love about the American entrepreneur and businessman. They are so intuitive, so long as they just know the direction of where things are going. And I think that was the hardest thing, where people go, well, this time's different because we don't have a clear path or a clear direction. But if you can be patient, typically that shows itself, maybe not in the very first few hours, but over time, it adds clarity, and then people can pivot and do what they need to get back to making money.
Are you ready to unlock the freedom to live your best life? Schedule your no-cost 60-minute discovery meeting with our team today. During this session, we'll take the time to understand your family story and financial dreams. Together, we'll craft a personalized roadmap designed to help you achieve your goals. Let's explore how we can unlock the freedom for you and your family to thrive. Just click the link in the description of today's show to get started.
I've had some great quotes so far. I really like this one a lot. Kind of makes you think. But Peter Lynch said, far more money has been lost by investors preparing for corrections or trying to anticipate corrections than has been lost in the corrections themselves.
I like Peter Lynch. He's got a lot of great quotes out there, and this definitely is one of my favorites that's out there. It reminds me of an investor that I have as a client, who had called me when Biden was elected, and called me that night. And I ended up taking the phone call, and He said, you got to pull all the money out of the market. It's going down because Biden was elected. And I try to tell people, don't let politics affect your investment decisions. But he did, and he pulled his money out, and his wife decided to keep our advice and stay invested. And over that course of time, every time we had a quarterly meeting, boy, she sure let him know how she was right to stay the course and how he was wrong, because there was a lot of money made after the Biden administration was put in. And not to get political one way or the other, I think that just goes with this quote that Peter has, that if we're trying to outguess or outbeat the market, you'll lose more money over time than if there is a correction in and of itself.
Yeah, I think you go back to Trump's second presidency. When that election was around, I think a lot of people reacted the same way, is, hey, I just want to get out and just prepare for what might come. And then we saw that first week, I think after he was elected, the market shot up, and obviously we've given back some of that. But if you would have tried to time the market then and got out and got back in after it had risen back up, then you'd even be further behind now than you were at that point. It kind of happens like that quite a bit. But just preparing for that, I mean, you got to stay invested.
You do. And, we've talked before about this, Ben, and that's where I feel like you got to have what I'm going to call a buffer account or some liquid cash that's out there, that if your money's invested in the short term, I think that's what really gets people hypersensitive and really emotional. But when you got money set aside to ride out the storm, God, it adds such a level of peace of mind for people. I just can't emphasize that enough. So whether it's the good years or the bad years, you just have to be asking yourself, what's that right amount that I ought to be having there? And if that's a question that you have, we'd love to help you, understand what that amount would be right for you in your situation.
Yeah, AxioWM.com. You can get a link in the show description as well as the phone number, and you can schedule that initial discovery call where you can talk through some of these things and talk through what's on your mind and kind of begin putting that plan in place. Let's finish off with one more from Morgan Housel, author of The Psychology of Money. Now, I need you to break this one down a little bit for me, because I've thought through it a little bit, but I can't completely make sense of it. So I want you to kind of explain it to me a little bit easier for me to understand. Risk is what's left over when you think you've thought of everything.
I would say this. It's okay to talk about my kids. I do it a lot on the show, so hope that's okay.
Yeah.
But, I've got a couple of teenagers, and we'll travel. And typically we're sitting there and thinking about, okay, what do they got to pack? And, they're older teenagers now, and I'm trying to be like, okay, I got to let them learn on themselves a little bit. And so, I sit there and I'll ask them, did you do this? Did you pack this? Did you pack that? I think if we think about investments and risk, it's kind of like traveling for a trip. You're trying to prepare for bad weather and good weather and what you need to pack. But we also don't want to just sit there and bring the whole kitchen sink in our suitcase either. And what's left over after you've thought of everything is the risk that you assume. And so that's the risk we take on ourselves. So I think about this as with a client, we're sitting down and talking about these buffer accounts like I talked about before. We'll put aside so much cash that they feel like they're going to need over the next 3 years. The other part that we invest, that's what is risk. That is what is out there. That's what we're willing to take the risk on. Same type of thing when you think about wrapping up grandma's china when you're trying to move and you got the bubble wrap that's on it. After you thought about how to pack it up and everything else, the risk of that being in transit, being a car accident or whatever you take, that's the risk you take. But you hope you've done enough preparation to isolate those risks that it's not going to break your plates or break your financial situation. So I don't know, Ben, if I made that a little more clouded in your mind or a little more clear.
No, it definitely made it more clear for sure. And it does make sense. And that's part of what the planning process is all about, right, Rob, is kind of putting, a plan in place that thinks of these things and maybe you don't have top of mind and prepares for all types of scenarios that, hey, may never come to fruition, but you're prepared nonetheless.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you have questions, AxioWM.com. Again, take advantage of that discovery call and begin talking through some of these concerns that you might have. But hopefully these great quotes and this wisdom from these great investors who have all experienced what we've experienced this year in 2025, and we will certainly experience again in the future, will help you out and kind of give you a little more sense of peace as you think through this. But the best step you can take is by building a plan so that you can stick to the process, have a program in place that you can follow. Rob, thanks for breaking it all down for us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.